Hello and welcome to Jessie Bear Cooking Club. Today we are making Prinsesstårta, the Swedish 1920s cake. Also known as green cake, this cake was made popular in the 1920s by 3 Swedish princesses and is still very popular today. I got this recipe out of All About History magazine and I really wanted to make it for Halloween because it's green. And it also has custard and jam in the center, so I thought that would look really, horrid and gooey when it all spills out. I am making 2 little changes to the recipe. The first one is that I am not going to use marzipan. I absolutely loathe marzipan. I always pick it off Christmas cake. It is disgusting. I'm going to use buttercream, so I'm going to make green buttercream icing to go around it. And I am not going to make my own custard because I don't have time for that. So, without further ado, let us make some cake. Also, do you like my hat? Witchy. So here are all my ingredients for baking the cake. I started out by getting my flour and all my other dry ingredients all sieved and ready to go, and of course sieving takes ages and it's kind of messy, and then I combined my sugar and my eggs together and I was going to beat them by hand, but then I remembered I had an electric whisk. So I started to whisk, which took ages. It said 5 minutes, but it took way longer. And then you had to fold the dry and wet ingredients together. It said to use a metal spoon, and the only metal spoons I have are teaspoons and other spoons for eating. So this took forever, and I wasn't sure if I was doing it right because it was deflating and you have to use plain flour. And I wasn't sure. I would rather have used self-raising flour. Then, after the mixture was all ready, it tasted like cake batter and I separated it into 3 molds. The recipe called for it all to be cooked in 1 mold and then cut into 3, but there was no way I could do that. I am not that skilled a baker, so 3 molds. Look at them there. And then I put them in the oven and they were meant to go in at 175 degrees for 35 minutes, but unfortunately, mine started getting really burnt on top and I thought about tenting them, but it wouldn't work and I just had to mess around with the heat, and the first one baked in 30 minutes, the other ones took another 20, and I started making my buttercream because, as I said, I hate marzipan. So icing sugar, butter, and I put my layers together, of course, with my jam. And I used seedless raspberry jam. You're meant to use raspberry jam and I prefer raspberry jam to strawberry, so I was pretty happy. And then custard. I was super lazy and didn't make my own custard, but bird's custard is always good, and look at it spread. Ooh. It was a bit wobbly. I felt like I should put one of those sticks in it like they do in Bake Off, but of course I didn't have any. And then I made buttercream, which took ages. And I ended up having to put some custard in it to make it more like liquidy, which wasn't good. And then trying to make the buttercream green was a complete disaster. I kept having to add more and more food coloring and it just wasn't working. And I was super scared of the buttercream being like too green or a really dark green or just tasting like food coloring. Even though I don't know what food coloring tastes like, I have an idea it would be very, very chemically. So this took for ages and ages, and then when I finally started putting my buttercream on top of my cake, it was so wobbly, so wobbly, and the buttercream didn't stay on the cake the way I wanted it to. It didn't make like a solid mold. I don't know why I expected it to, but it didn't, and it was just all slimy. And afterwards I put it in the fridge for a bit thinking that would solid it up, but it didn't. It was just continued to be super runny, and I have all this leftover green buttercream in my fridge now, and I was thinking of buying muffins and putting it on top of muffins because muffins are good and buttercream is good. And needless to say, this cake was a bit of a disaster. And when I finally was finished with it, it was time to indulge, and I opened it up with one big slice and it was a little bit gross. And I was thinking it would be gross looking because, custard and jam all together, but it was grosser than I thought it was going to be. Look at the ooze. Look at the ooze. Anyway, it was fun to make. I don't think I would make it again, or if I did make it again, I would probably make it with self-raising flour because it just was not puffy enough. So, as you can see, the cake looked a little bit messy, probably because I made buttercream, but I was very disappointed because it wasn't very nice at all. It was really rubbery and dense, and I don't know, did I do something wrong? I followed the recipe completely. I know it's a recipe from a magazine, so like maybe this is on me for doing a recipe from a magazine and not a real book, but it was just rubbery, like it hadn't cooked, and I put it in at the right temperature for the right amount of time. And as you've seen, I used 3 different cake molds because I'm lazy and don't want to cut them in half, and only one of them cooked in the allotted time. I had to keep the other 2 in for like 30 and 40 minutes, and they were just rubbery and weird and like not cooked. Like, it was just gross. Anyway, a bit disappointed, but you've got to try these things. If anyone has a better recipe for Prinsesstårta, please let me know. I do have another recipe from the BBC History magazine that I might try out, but it's literally exactly the same, so maybe I won't. Would self-raising flour be better than plain flour? I think maybe. Don't know. Anyone's made this before, please let me know. I was looking at pictures online and it looked really weird and dense, and yeah, it's just the way it is. I didn't like it, but you know, that's me. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this historical cooking with Jessie Bear Book Club for Halloween with my witch's hat. Have a happy Halloween and a brilliant Spooktober. Bye! Also, my cake looks so gross and green and spooky. I loved it. It was like Shrek. It had layers.